You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a Christian or you're not.
I won't talk to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
Danny, you were the smartass in the room, according to Jordan.
People can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated. Christians are.
We have two gaytheists on the panel that have said that I've bullied them.
See, like this kind of behavior. Look at this behavior.
It's called a joke,
Yeah.
sensitive
They're
man.
funny, Dyer.
Oh my
It's a
God, look at this
homophobic
behavior. This behavior is
This
out
guy-
of
You
control.
are two gaytheists.
It's too
so
much
it's
behavior.
pretty
Bad
good.
behavior.
Wait, I'm sorry. I thought we're supposed to be loving to thy neighbor.
You don't know what loving
Just start
means.
being
You don't even know what that
bigoted.
means.
Oh,
Let's
Yeah,
not
loving.
talk over each other. When 20 committed atheists recently took on Professor Jordan Peterson as part of Jubilee's Surrounded series, it's fair to say it got quite intense, especially for Dr. Peterson. Two exchanges in particular took the internet by storm.
So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say
circular?
you believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause
Christian
I won't
or you're
talk to
not.
you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
How would you define belief? Something you say?
Can I explain? Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your
Don't
life?
be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video,
You're really quite something, you are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Well, now, in the wake of that video, one of Peterson's young inquisitors posted on X, Peterson was no Christian. Let's move on. Are there any actual Christians that want to debate? Which is quite the challenge, but one that, of course, we on Uncensored are only too keen to facilitate. So making their Uncensored debut from the Danny Philtalk channel, Danny Shaw, and Parker from the Parker Get a Job channel. And we've arranged for them to take on two of the most notorious and fearsome debaters on the internet, who also happen to be conservative Christians. The king of blood sport debating, Andrew Wilson from The Crucible, and the equally forthright author, comedian and commentator, Dyer from the Dyer channel. Welcome to all four of you. Well, let me start with you, Parker. Were you surprised by the reaction to what went down with Jordan Peterson?
Actually, no. I was actually expecting this to happen, as I knew before this, as I watched the Alex O'Connor debate against Jordan Peterson, that he was very, very not likely to, like being associated with Christianity. So I knew actually going into this that I was going to ask him a question specifically about whether or not he believes this to be the case, and that he would likely be not very upfront with his answer. So I actually kind of expected there to be a response like this. Now, I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, as there are literally tens of millions of views on clips associated with mine and Danny's against Jordan Peterson all over social media. So it's actually really cool to see that, everyone across the board, whether it be Christians, atheists, Muslims, right, et cetera, actually see that like he's really not wanting to answer the question there because he doesn't want to be associated with Christianity for some reason.
And Danny, I mean, you were the smartass in the room, according to Jordan. What's been your reaction to the fallout?
I'm generally happy that that people can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated. Christians are, right? Here we have Peterson saying things like, yeah, I think Jesus might have resurrected, but I don't know what that means. Yeah, I might be a Christian in some sense. I'm a one-of-a-kind Christian. It's all wishy-washy. We're all frustrated, and I think that the video is the culmination of that frustration.
Okay, well, the good news, like I told you, is we found two far from shy Christians to take you on in this arena. Andrew Wilson, let me start with you. What was your reaction to these two and their showdown with Jordan Peterson?
I mean, I kind of have to agree with Danny a little bit. It's like, like people have been wanting this guy to take the position on whether he's a Christian or not a Christian forever, on the right, the left, center, basically across the board. Now, I'll always be in some ways grateful to Jordan Peterson. He was one of the first who kind of started the trend of standing up to the pronouns people, which was pretty epic to watch. But, ultimately, he's kind of a shell of his former self. He didn't look great going through that debate. He looked kind of run down. I think that him being on with the Daily Wire probably hasn't been great for him. He's not he doesn't have the kind of edge that he used to have. But ultimately, I mean, I was actually kind of glad to see it. It's about time we know, are you or aren't you? Get off the shit or get off the pot, essentially, right? Are you a Christian or aren't you a Christian? That's a fair question.
And Jay, I mean, ultimately, these two young men on the panel today, they're sworn atheists. You obviously are not. So if you were actually conducting a debate about their atheism against your Christianity, how would you take them on, given what happened to Jordan?
Well, it depends on what you mean, Piers. Depends on what you mean.
How would I take them on? Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could critique an atheist position. Most of the time, I argue from the three branches of philosophy: epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Those are just the three branches of any worldview, and everybody has a worldview, whether they know it consciously or not. So I would critique the foundations of the atheist materialist worldview to see if it's rational, if it's coherent, if it can provide a justification for knowledge or ethical oughts. So I think that would have been a much better route. In fact, Peterson used to kind of take that approach when he debated Sam Harris. He would call out the is-ought problem with Sam Harris. When he debated Matt Dillahunty, he would call out the exact same types of preconditions for a worldview issue that I used to do, or I usually do. So I think that'd be a better route than just sort of having this ambiguous, Jungian position of non-committal, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to you, Parker and Danny, that I've interviewed Jordan Peterson a lot, maybe 5-6 times on Uncensored. Quite long interviews, often quite emotional. He's an emotional guy. I would disagree with Andrew about him losing his edge. I think he's still got the edge. I also think that, putting aside the whole debate about Christianity and whether he is or not, he's always been oddly ambiguous about it for someone who's so unambiguous about everything else. But that's his right. He's entitled to do that. As a force for good, though, for young men, I do think that in comparison, for example, to Andrew Tate, that Jordan Peterson has been a far better influence over the minds of young men of your kind of age than someone like Andrew Tate would ever be. Would you agree with that, Parker?
I actually would agree with that, although the bar is literally in hell.
Right. I mean, you must see some positives in the general messaging that Jordan gives for young men about wanting to improve their lives, wanting to empower themselves, opening up and so on. And do you accept that about him?
I think it's good to open up, and I think it's good for men to want to improve their lives, but we also need to be very specific on what is improving towards their lives. And I honestly don't think that Jordan Peterson, within all respects, would be upholding that. But sure, I can say he's better than someone like Andrew Tate. I think that's pretty obvious.
Danny, what's your view of Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson when it comes to their influence on young men? Because it is huge.
Yeah,
with both of them. I can tell you, when I walk around, most people under 25 who are male come up and they ask me either about Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I feel like the question is like asking a Republican, is Joe Biden better than Mussolini, right? I mean, it's such a vast difference. I would say that it seems like that Jordan Peterson has benefited people, mostly in the psychology realm, the whole 12 rules for life and stuff, which a lot of those rules seems to be rules that my grandma could tell me. But granted, the point is that, yeah, he's probably helped people. I have no problem with saying that.
All right, Andrew, let's turn to some other issues here. One is Pride Month. Now, my view of this is I don't understand why we need a whole month for Pride. I don't even get an hour as a straight guy. So why do we need a month for Pride? And it's not because I'm remotely homophobic, because I'm not. I'm the complete opposite. I've always absolutely supported gay rights. I just don't get why we need to have a month of Pride. Beam's creatine is America's #1, and it's made by a company founded on values like hard work and delivering real results. Creatine is often dismissed as just for bodybuilders, but the truth is that it's one of the most researched, effective, and safest supplements for supporting strength, brain health, and longevity. Quality matters, of course, and Beam Creatine delivers. There's no fillers, no sugar, and nothing synthetic. Just clean, science-backed creatine for strength, focus, and results. We've teamed up to give you up to 30% off their best-selling creatine for a limited time only. Go to shopbeam.com/peers and use the code PEERS at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/peers, PIERS. Use the code PEERS for up to 30% off. These sales don't happen very often. This is the lowest price you'll find anywhere for a product of this quality. Go to shopbeam.com/peers and use the promo code PEERS for up to 30% off.
Well, Pride's always been completely astroturfed. I mean, to be honest, right from the very beginning, it's been astroturfed. It was always pumped full of government money, NGO funding. It was pumped full of corporate money. There was an article that came out, you can find in the Drudge Report, it came out today from, I believe it was Daily Telegram. It was pretty interesting. They went over, a lot of the modern Trump administration and what they have done with their executive orders. A lot of companies have begun moving away from trying to kind of fund this, and it hasn't been popular for the last couple of years anyway. There's been a lot of pushback on various large corporations, companies, and NGOs for trying to pump kind of artificially these organizations. One of the things that article points out, which I tend to agree with, is that, hey, look, ultimately, when these companies are doing this, people lose trust for them. You remember there was a big thing with Target not that long ago. Anytime this comes to light, there's actually a backlash. People can kind of see that it's artificially held up. There's no reason for it. It's silly. It has never really been about gay rights. It's
what do you mean
about
there's no
weird,
reason for it? What do you mean?
It's
what do you
been,
mean there's no
it's
reason?
been, well, because it's
What do
always
you mean
really
there's no
been
reason
about,
for it, right? They're,
I'm
they're
trying to
bullies like you.
Do you want me to answer
right?
it? Do you want me to answer the question or no?
Yeah, you can go ahead, and I'll explain to you why I think there's the reason after.
Okay. Yeah. So there's no real reason for it. It's been about pushing sexual perversions, never really been about anything to do with homosexuals themselves not having rights or having rights. It's never been about that. It's been about weird gay pride parades and all kinds of weird sexual stuff. It really has never been about that. And that's what the American people think. That's what they see. That's why you see companies moving away from it.
No, I don't think that's true. Look, they're gay people like let's take you for example. You're the reason, right? When I first talked to you, right, we were having a normal debate about, I think, morality, and then you randomly asked me, "What's your, are you a homosexual?" As to
And you were,
to put it
right?
down, right? And then
And you were, right?
also with,
But
and
hang
Jay Dyer's
on, was
done
I
the same
right
thing.
though? Was I right?
I'm not a homosexual. No, I'm married
You said
to a
that you
woman.
were
I'm
bisexual. You said that you were
Right.
bisexual. That's
Homosexual is
homosexual.
not the
So I
same
was
as bisexual.
there's
Maybe you can
certain
learn the
certain
definitions
ways.
of terms, but
Look,
the
there's
point is
certain
that
ways that people
like you and
conduct
Jay Dyer,
themselves.
people like you and Jay Dyer bully LGBTQ
Oh,
people.
yeah, everyone's
That's why
bullied,
it's
yeah, I
pride,
know.
because of the kind of stigmas that you promote.
Okay, so here's the thing that's so funny about this is like if both me and Jay Dyer, both of us assumed that you were a homosexual and both of us were right. That's what's so funny about it. We
Again,
both assumed you were
why are you saying I'm
gay,
homosexual?
and we were both correct that you were gay.
Andrew, is there
The
anything
point is
wrong
that
with
we
him
were
being gay?
You go, Parker.
Huh?
Is there anything wrong with him being gay?
There's
Andrew?
a problem with you guys supporting NGO-funded kind of astroturf program to promote rights, which aren't even about promoting rights.
Was that a response to what he just said?
The whole ordeal here is, well, what's the prompt, Parker? The prompt is about pride. And so you're supporting an astroturfed, completely astroturfed NGO-funded thing. It has nothing to do with gay rights at all. And people don't like it, Parker. They don't like it, Parker.
Well, Parker,
So that
I would
wasn't an answer to my-
ask Parker this. Look, Andrew, you said
That's my
some
question.
things which I completely disagree with about this issue. You said women will never truly understand why men find homosexuality so depraved. We don't think there's a problem there. We know there's a problem there. I'm a man. I don't find homosexuality remotely depraved. I think people's sexuality is what it is. So I don't agree with you with some of the statements you've made. However, Parker, I am increasingly bemused why, when there are so many important things in the world to worry about, we devote a whole month to gay pride. Why do we?
There are plenty of things that we specifically have months for to celebrate that I think are incredibly important. This, in this specific example, is incredibly important because of the dehumanization and the bigotry espoused specifically by people like Dyer and Andrew Wilson, and explicitly kicking people off of their panels because they're gay, right, or because they're homosexual, which I think is incredibly ridiculous.
But you know
right?
as well as I do, Parker,
can I please finish?
If you
Can I please
compare
finish,
it,
Piers?
look, well, hang on, I'll say, if you go back 35, 40 years, I would completely agree with you. But the idea that that is still the case today, I just don't feel it. Do you? I mean, certainly
Piers,
young
have you never
people,
been on Twitter?
in particular, do not. It's just moved
Piers,
on. isn't it?
respectfully, how would you know as a straight person? Like, how would you, do you experience
Piers,
it?
look,
Why are you assuming my
I want
sexuality?
to talk about Piers. I want to talk about my
Because you've
experience
talked
when I
about
went viral. Piers, when I went viral, right? I had people message, saying, calling me the F slur, saying I had a gay lisp, right? When I'm married to a woman, right? If I'm not even a homosexual, and if people are bullying me for that, I can't imagine what actual homosexuals have to go through. So,
Well, what is, if you don't mind me
bullying.
asking, given it's now been sort of raised, and I'm not quite sure, are you straight? Are you bisexual? What's the deal?
I'm bisexual. I've been married to a woman happily for 5 years, and we're monogamous.
Okay, all
Two
right.
gaytheists. I want to chime in.
All right.
We have two gaytheists on the panel that have said that I
See, like
bullied
this
them.
kind of
and
behavior. Look at this behavior.
that's called a joke. That's called a joke,
Yeah,
sensitive
so
man.
funny, Dyer.
Oh my
It's a
God! Look at this
homophobic joke.
behavior.
You-
This behavior is
this-
out
Well,
of
you
control.
are two gaytheists.
It's too
so
much
it's
behavior.
pretty
Bad
good.
behavior.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold up. Are you guys Christians? I thought we were supposed to be loving to thy neighbor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
the only
love
thing-
also includes
but-
telling you when it's wrong.
Don't
so.
you love trans people, Parker? You said that you would date a trans person. Remember that? Or was
Yeah,
it-
and what's wrong with that?
I think that
What's
you're
wrong
more,
with that?
I guess you are more loving than me than Parker. I wouldn't date a trans person. But
Okay,
hey,
but, okay,
he's
is that
right.
supposed to be like
Two
a critique of
atheists.
me?
So the
Wait,
problem
what
is
happened to being
that
loving?
these guys
I
can't
asked
give an
you as
account
Christians.
for the
I called
good.
for you as Christians to be loving.
All they've
and both
talked
of you did
about
not
is
show
what's
loving.
right
You
and
just
You don't know
showed
what
being-
loving
you just showed being
means. You don't even know what that
bigoted.
means.
All right, let's
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
let's not
yeah.
talk over each other because no one can overhear. Jay.
Yeah. So earlier in the first section, when we talked about Peterson, we were talking about what was good for men
Yeah.
and whether Tate was good or Peterson was good. And now we're talking about ethics in the sexual domain, which there's no basis in their worldview for anything to be morally,
What's the argument for
objectively
that?
right or wrong, other
Why
than
would
their
anyone
personal
believe that?
preferences. So if there are,
Why would
if there's
anyone
nothing
believe that, Jay?
objectively
You're just
wrong,
making a claim.
there's no reason why bigotry is wrong. Why is bigotry wrong?
Well, I want
Whoa,
support your
okay.
claim. Don't run from your claim. Support it. Right? We have no. You're saying we as atheists have no basis of morality. Support that.
Yeah, no epistemic basis for getting an ought from an is.
Yeah, that's a claim. Okay. Well, you're saying atheists.
No, it's an
can't
argument.
account
It's a
for
famous
morality,
argument.
right? You're saying that atheists can't account for morality. So what's the argument for that?
You can't get an ought from an is the argument. Back to Hume.
It looks like you don't know what an argument is. Come on, reason. Try to go from one line of reasoning to another. Do you know what an argument
You
is?
cannot get an
Coward?
ought from an is. You're an atheist.
That's
In a
just
materialistic
okay, but what does that
worldview,
have to do
there's
with
no ought.
atheism? What does that have to do with atheism?
In a materialistic, atheistic worldview, there are no oughts.
First of all, I'm not a
You
materialist.
don't know the
and-
basic problem
and that's
of
just
ought
another
from is?
claim. That's just
It's
another
not a
claim.
claim, it's
Can
an
you support
argument.
claim?
It's a famous historical.
Look,
You don't know
you're
the
just
difference between a
coward.
claim
You
and an
made a
argument.
claim. You can't defend it.
It's an argument. It goes back to David Hume.
Can you tell us
It's
what
a-
an
You don't know-
argument
you
is?
didn't even know that.
Right?
You don't know
Look,
the difference
everyone,
between.
look what just happened. Look what just happened. This guy said.
Just what just
atheism
happened is
is
that
the
you didn't know the
foundation
difference
for
between an
morality.
argument and a
Why are you
claim.
over talking to me? Why are you scared? Let me talk. Right? You just claimed that atheists don't have a foundation of morality. I asked you to defend it, and then you said you can't get an ought from an is. What the heck?
That's the argument. That's
where are you
correct.
going to
It's
get from
called
that
an
premise?
argument.
Right? You can't derive
It's an
that.
argument. It's not a premise. It goes back to David Hume. You just didn't know that.
Okay, can we look? I think,
What's the
we're
difference?
guys,
Give an
guys.
answer to it.
I think
I'm
we're
sorry
moving
that you don't
slightly
know.
off topic. Let's bring it back to Pride Month. I want to play something which has had a lot of people talking on social media. This is Sesame Street, where all the puppets holding hands, making up the Pride flag, and they say, "On our street, everyone is welcome. Together, let's build a world where every person and family feels loved and respected for who they are. Happy Pride Month." I guess I would say, Parker, again, the problem with this is it's this kind of enforced virtue signaling. It reminds me in a way, for very different reasons, the day in the George Floyd fallout when everyone had to do a black square on their Instagram or somehow they were racist. And I refused and everyone called me a racist. I went, why does putting a black square on my Instagram make any difference to anything? Again, with this, if you don't go along with the Pride Month stuff, then somehow you must be homophobic, is the kind of way this all seems to work. And I don't like that. I don't understand why we have to have any more these enforced things where everywhere you go for a whole month, everything's Pride. Why? Why can't you just Everyone just get on with their lives. Studies show that strength training burns more fat than cardio alone and is critical for maintaining muscle mass and bone density as we age. Jacked Up Fitness has the perfect tool. The Jacked Up Power Rack Pro is the ultimate all-in-one home gym system for a full body workout, and you can do it in your spare room or garage. I'm delighted to say I now have one myself. So if you're new to strength training, there is a whole library of full body video workouts. You just press play and you follow along. With top quality equipment and first class content, Jacked Up Fitness makes your fitness goals accessible and convenient. We've teamed up to give you 10% off the Power Rack Pro. Visit getjackedup.com to sign up for the free program and use promo code PIERS, P-I-E-R-S, for your discount. That's getjackedup.com.
Yeah, so like a way that I would respond to this is by saying that because of the bigotry and dehumanization that exists in our society, it's important to have these things for acceptance to decrease the level of bullying that exists in our society targeted towards the LGBTQ plus community. Now, no one's saying that you have to go to Pride, Piers. No one's saying that you have to involve yourself with Pride. When I go outside, I live in Los Angeles, I don't see rainbow flags everywhere. So I'm confused what you're talking about.
In Los Angeles?
You walk down the street and just,
you must be joking, but you can barely move in Los
I live in
Angeles.
Los Angeles.
I've got a house in Beverly Hills. You might as well put a Pride flag over the whole place.
I'm sorry. I've been to those areas. Not Pride flags aren't everywhere. And when you live in Beverly Hills, right? That's specifically like not even right next to downtown. So that's where most of the rainbow flags would be. If you've actually been to LA recently.
Here's my serious point to you. If you actually want to do something constructive for, say, the trans community, for example, wandering around with LGBTQ plus, and no one can ever remember now how many letters and digits there are on these.
You just said it.
It gets it gets bigger and bigger. And I've seen one with 2 in it and all sorts of stuff, a 2-spirit, whatever. It's all.
All it is IA plus.
Yeah, I know, but then
That's
there's
it.
2 and everything. It gets ridiculous, right? And this is the problem with these things. It's never ending. It's like there were 2 genders, then there were 10, then there were 80, then there were 100. All of it's nonsense to me. However,
it wasn't like this,
however,
then that,
if you
but-
want to think that, it's a free world. Here's my point. If you actually want to make a constructive difference to, say, the trans community and trans rights and protect trans people, then the absolute worst way to go about that is the way that the trans lobby has tried to do it, by eroding women's rights in things like women's sport. That has exposed so many trans people to mockery, abuse, and the rest of it. And I would say that rather than spending all this time and effort and money on flags in Pride Month, what about just actually getting people together to understand that eroding women's rights is the worst possible thing to promote trans rights? Would you accept that?
Okay, so then if we were going to be talking about eroding women's rights, we'd have to talk about people that, you know, someone like Andrew Wilson supports, like Donald Trump, who was held civilly liable of sexually abusing a woman, who bragged about
Well, hang on, let's stick to my question. Don't bring Trump into it.
I promise you I'm making a point relative to this.
All right.
He bragged
Smoky
about
man
walking
bad. Smoky man bad. Smoky man
bragged-
bad.
You're very childish. He bragged about walking
All you
into the
can
changing
do
rooms.
is focus on me. You can't even answer to his question, dude. He's just.
I'm
but
promise
Andrew
you I'm
Wilson
answering it right now.
bad.
You're cutting me off.
But Smoky man bad.
You're
Yeah,
cutting me
I
off.
was
I'm trying to
wondering
answer it
as
right now. Respectfully, I'm trying to answer it right now, but you're not allowing me to.
Okay, well, answer without distracting into Trump and stuff. Just answer the question.
Well, I'm giving an explanation, right? So he bragged about walking into the changing rooms of girls in Miss USA because he quote unquote owns the place to inspect them without their
Forget
consent.
Trump. Forget Trump.
I promise you I'm making a point here. Would you like me
You
to
have to
finish,
get to the
please?
point a bit quicker. Come on.
I promise you I am. I've had 15 seconds. Okay, so specifically, right, people like Andrew Wilson do not call that type of stuff out when it's explicitly harmful towards women's rights.
You're playing
Right, trans
whataboutery.
people
I'm not
being-
interested in whataboutery. Because I haven't done that.
I'm explaining
So
now.
as somebody like me, talk to me,
trans
Parker,
people-
talk to me, right? As somebody who has always supported,
I was going to refer to
as
trans
someone
people.
who's
You're not
always
allowing me to
supported
speak, Piers.
trans rights, trans
This is
people's
incredibly
rights
disingenuous.
Well, I have always supported trans people's rights to fairness, equality, and safety, right to the point that it began to erode into women's rights to the same thing. And that's my point to you. Why waste all this time, effort, and money on virtue signaling for Pride Month when in fact there's a real problem going on which remains unresolved because too many people on the left and too many young people go along with this absolute farce of trans athletes in women's sport, which exposes trans people around the world to extra mockery and abuse.
But you'll
you're saying
condemn the
we're
mockery and
you
abuse
said-
from people like Jay Dyer, and these
All
are
he
the
has
mockers.
is ad hominem.
You condemn that.
That's
Well,
all
I'm
he
saying
has.
you're going to get the mockery when there is something so obviously grotesquely unfair.
Can I respond?
Parker,
to
you
this
got
as
your
well?
hand up very politely, so answer me. Without
Yeah,
mentioning
so,
Donald Trump or Andrew Wilson.
Yeah, okay. So I can't mention the person on the panel, but specifically
No.
in terms of trans people are not specifically going to be harmful towards women in these particular spaces, given that they've met the conditions of multiple years of HRT.
Have you been
plus
fought?
and/or
Okay,
the-
have you
and-
been fought?
Can I
Okay,
please
sorry,
finish?
sorry.
Can I-
Hang on,
Piers,
hang on,
Piers,
hang on.
please let me
No,
finish.
Parker, you can't make it.
Parker,
Parker, literally, as you've said this, today it's been revealed.
I'm finishing, Piers.
Today,
Piers, I'm trying to
wait
explain.
a minute.
I'm trying to explain, Piers.
You talked about safety.
This is disingenuous.
Literally today, the Algerian gold medal winner in the Paris
haven't been able to
Olympics
speak.
women's boxing has been
Piers, can I
revealed
speak?
to be a man who should never have been competing.
Piers, can I speak?
That's
Piers,
why.
Can I,
You
speak?
know how people feel when they're on your panels and you mute
Can
them,
I speak
Parker.
without interruption, please?
All right, answer.
I've been incredibly nice on this panel. I would love to be able to speak without interruption. Is that okay, Piers?
Yes, but answer my question.
Yeah, I was trying to answer the question. You cut me off. So specifically, I don't think trans people in these spaces would be harmful after multiple years of HRT and or not going through a male puberty, as I've seen no good evidence from any scientific studies that indicate that there would be an unfair biological advantage
Imam
at that
Khalif,
point.
what are you
Not to
talking
say, listen,
about, man?
Listen, I'm still explaining.
Parker, you're
Listen, I'm
talking
not-
complete gibberish,
Can
man.
I please finish?
Imam Khalif has literally just been exposed as a biological male who won Olympic gold in women's boxing and beat up an Italian boxer, woman, so badly she quit in 43 seconds and said she thought she was going to die in the ring. So the whole argument you just put forward is literally disproved by a news story today. That's the point I was making to you. Of
Piers,
course
have
it's
they got-
dangerous.
Piers,
when you allow
Piers, have they-
biological men to get in a boxing ring and beat up women, it is dangerous.
Piers, has that person been through multiple years of HRT?
I don't know. I don't care.
Then they haven't
That
met my set
person
of
is a
criteria.
man.
So how is that a critique of my worldview if they haven't met the set of criteria that I mentioned? Can I please finish? Can I please mention? Can I please mention? Right. So again, let me please finish. Right. I am saying if they meet this set of criteria, then they can play. And there's nothing unfair biologically
Yes, there
speaking that you
is,
can
though.
identify.
This is where you're so
scientifically
deluded.
speaking.
You're
No,
so
no, this is
deluded
just you.
because
No,
even
no,
if you
no,
have
Piers,
all the
Piers,
if you
Piers,
have
let me
all the
respond.
treatment,
Let me respond,
you still
Piers.
retain
You
the
have no
body
doubt,
mass,
Parker.
the
This is incredibly
muscle
disingenuous.
mass, the lung capacity. You retain all the biological advantages of being born
Not after
a
multiple
man.
years of HRT. Not
Yes,
after
you
multiple
do.
years of HRT.
Yes, you
Wait, do you want to
do.
bet, Piers? Piers, put money on it. You said you retain every biological advantage.
Muscle
given
mass,
that you have gone through multiple years
lung
of HRT.
capacity.
You don't think muscle mass
You want to
in
bet
one
your
capacity goes
entire
down?
savings of your entire life
Let's
that
bet
I'm right
Piers,
and you're wrong?
Piers, let's bet $1,000 right now that there are lower biological advantages that would specifically exist given that someone goes through multiple years of HRT, right, relative to estrogen.
No, you're missing my point.
Bet that. Take that bet.
No, you're
Take that
missing
bet.
you're missing my point.
Are you going to accept the bet? Yes or no?
You can have
yes or no?
all the HRT treatment you
$1,000,
like.
Piers.
You can have all the
$1,000.
testosterone. But hang
He's not
on.
going to accept it.
Let
He
me
won't do
answer.
it.
Let me answer.
Crashing
I'll tell
out.
you the bet I'll make. If you want to bet the $1,000,
it.
if you want to bet the $1,000 that if you go through testosterone reduction treatment and the rest of it, that you come out of it with a reduced muscle mass or lung capacity or the other things that give men an advantage, take that bet for me.
Yeah. So I will bet after multiple years of HRT, specifically relating to estrogen, right, there is a reduction in muscle mass. You want to take that bet, Piers?
It's bullshit. Andrew Wilson.
Okay, let's take that bet. You
Andrew
want to take it,
Wilson.
yes or no?
Andrew Wilson.
Yes or no? Do you want to take the bet?
I'm letting Andrew respond to you.
Yeah. So when you're talking specifically about the whole LGBTQ thing has backfired greatly. And it's because this whole thing, pride is astroturfed. It's literally astroturfed. You just showed us how. I mean, you have a massive corporation putting out propaganda for a children's TV show, showing, a bunch of hands in a rainbow, this and that. It's very clear that this is backfiring. And by the way, the trans movement set the gay rights movement back 20 years or more. You can't convince us, Parker, even if you're attracted to men who you call women, that the rest of us need to call them women or men. Like they either are or they aren't.
Is this not changing the topic?
You have been trying to convince people forever that there's no way to distinguish these things. It's like, look, the average normal person, they can tell that these guys who go out and go, "Hey, how you doing? My name is Chuck," with long hair are clearly not women, Parker. Like, we know this. And so what happens is you guys gaslight everybody and try to pretend that, hey, you just can't really know. It's too vague. We can't really get to the meat and potatoes here. It's like, We do know, Parker, and you have not been able to successfully, with your TikTok brain, convince people that men can be women and women can be men. You haven't done that. And that's one of the reasons that you see Pride falling behind, is because of all of this gaslighting. People are rejecting it.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up enforcement for those who missed the April deadline or still owe back taxes. Well, today's sponsor, Tax Network USA, can still help. If your books are a mess, if you're self-employed, or if you're a business owner, Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track quickly. They say the IRS is applying enforcement pressure at levels they've never seen before. But even after the deadline, it's not too late to take control. The consultation is completely free. Acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's tnusa.com/peers. Let Tax Network USA make the next move, not the IRS. Let's move on to another subject.
Can I respond? Can I respond to
Well,
that
very quickly, yeah.
So one, I'm not saying that men can be women. We're making the claim that trans women are women and trans men are men, right? That's a separate claim from the original claim about pride. I do want to address the claim specifically about pride and how we're addressing like how people are negatively impacted. And as a society, we want to address this in terms of this so that we can reduce the likelihood of people being harmed or negatively impacted or not accepted in these communities. That's the point of pride in these conditions, right? Just because it is the case that issues have existed to a greater extent in the past doesn't mean that we don't have an issue to address today, right? In terms of pride, right? Like addressing that we should have acceptance of gay people. We should have acceptance of people in the LGBTQ plus community. So
Yeah,
Isn't it
I-
counterintuitive though, Parker, to
I'd
say
like to add one
like
thing. I would like to add one thing.
clearly it's backfiring. Like it seems like it's counterintuitive. If you push the
well, there's a
propaganda
mistake that
that
you're
I
making.
think it's backfiring.
Yeah, it's
I want to
backfiring.
highlight.
Let me bring in
I
Danny.
wanna highlight
Let
Let me
that.
bring
Where
in
is
Danny.
it?
Let Danny have a say.
Yeah, right. I want to highlight that what the corporations do, right? I might agree with you. Some of them sell out for pride, right? They, it's marketable. I might agree with you, but pride is way more than just what the corporations do. It's how people, identify with their sexuality and, kind of anti-bullying agenda. That's very important and central to pride. Whatever the corporations do, if they sell out, they sell out. But you can still have pride, whatever they do.
Yeah, you can have pride,
Well,
but why
hang
do you
on,
have to have?
Danny, though,
Why do you have to have all the
like, it's
commercialization
not
behind
organic.
it?
It's not organic, Danny. This is not
Anti-bullying is inherently
organically. This is not organically people coming together anymore to force this. This is a bunch of NGOs
Andrew,
which go
if
to
you were
corporations
if
in
you were
order to
actually
promote
Christian, you would be
this.
in support of pride. If you were actually Christian, you'd be in support of pride because you'd be
What's-
okay
oh,
with
yeah?
accepting people.
Is there a cardinal
right?
sin
Yeah,
called
that's what
pride?
Jesus said.
Is there a cardinal sin called
Wait,
pride?
it's not
Parker?
pride in a literal sense. It's pride specifically in the
Yeah,
sense
you
of
know,
That's actually a
accepting
very
people
good point.
or being
Pride
loving
is
of
a
thy
sin.
neighbor.
Sense pride.
Why are you celebrating
I'm not-
sin?
It's not
Yeah,
pride
you're
in a literal
celebrating
sense.
Pride in
sin.
the
Literally,
sense
what are you
that
talking
we're
about?
You're
proud to be
misunderstanding.
Christian.
You're misunderstanding. It's not pride in a literal sense. It's pride in the sense specifically where we're accepting people specifically for being gay, right? For
Yeah,
being
but that's
trans,
not
and that's
Christian.
exactly
They're
what
proud of
Christianity-
it.
Wait,
Because
Christianity
they're
does tell you to do
proud
that.
of it, right?
Christianity tells you to
they're
love
proud of it.
everyone and tells you to
It
accept
doesn't
people who are
only
human
say
beings
that.
made
It
in the image
also
of
talks
God.
about
Gay
boundaries
people-
and limitations. You
But
have to
gay
have a
people and trans
basis
people-
for virtue versus vice. Christianity is a virtue vice ethic, and your whole ethos is to defend your own personal vices because your ethics are all purely subjective. You
Are
have
you
no
proud to be a
basis for
Christian,
rights
Jay? Are
other
you proud to
than
be a
what you
Christian?
say is the case.
Jay, are you proud to be a Christian?
Sure.
Oh, that's a sin.
That's an
Pride.
equivocation.
Oh,
I didn't make
get 'em.
the argument. I didn't make the
I mean, look,
argument. That's an equivocation.
We're not talking about the cardinal
What's
sin.
an
We're talking about
equivocation
the sense of
fallacy?
pride. We're talking about the sense of pride that matters, to your identity, who you are, Christian.
I said virtue
gay,
vice
straight.
ethic, and you used an argument from equivocation. It's two different uses
No,
of the
no,
word.
you're equivocating.
Wait, that's what
you
Piers
brought up
was
the
doing.
cardinal sin.
No. Yes, you are. I didn't say that pride is the sin that is
Respectfully, wasn't that exactly what you guys were doing when I said that pride wasn't used in a literal sense, but then you guys equivocated and said that we were.
I didn't make that argument. Andrew made that argument. I said you don't
So
have
Andrew
a
made a
basis
mistake.
for virtue
So
or
Andrew
vice.
made a mistake. So Andrew made a mistake.
I said you don't have a
right?
basis for virtue or
No,
vice.
we were basing this around the idea that Parker said. What Parker said specifically here was, well, wait a second. If you're a Christian, you should be all about this. And it's like, no, not really. And you haven't really demonstrated how. Why, Parker? Why is it that we need to support homosexuality as Christians, Parker? Tell us why.
Well, I was saying that you should be loving of thy neighbor as you're referencing specifically people, right? Human beings, right? If you're referencing
love
Why
people
does
and
that
human
mean we
beings,
have to
qualified as
support
having boundaries.
homosexuality? Why do we have to
No,
support
I'm
homosexuality?
I'm saying that you have to be accepting of people who are homosexual.
Why
Because
do
you
we
are
need
Christian.
to support homosexuality, Parker?
Okay, we're not saying you need to support like engaging in gay intercourse. We're saying that you need to support people who are gay as they are people created in the image of God.
Why do we need to support them? Why do we need to
created in
support
the image
them
of God.
in things that we consider sinful? You want us to support sin?
Wait, I'm not
But
saying that
by
you should
support, he just
necessarily
means-
support sin. I'm saying you're supporting the person who engages in sin the same way you're a sinner, and that you engage in sin, yet you should be supported.
So when homosexuals come to the church and they reject homosexuality, they're no longer acting in that way. They are accepted.
They're
in
not
the church.
rejected.
What are you talking about?
Wait, by
It's
the way,
an
nothing in the
action, it's not
Bible
an
says that
identity.
being
So there's
being
a vice
gay-
virtue
exactly.
ethic that they're not understanding. It's not an identity, it's a vice.
Wait,
Well,
hold on. So
look,
being-
I want to bring this. I
being
want to
gay
bring
is
the
different
pride
from
bit to an end.
engaging
We're going to
in
move on
gay
to the
intercourse.
last topic. All I would say is, look, I absolutely do not think homosexuality is a sin. I completely respect everyone's right to have any sexuality they like. I just don't see the point in spending a whole month allowing companies to virtue signal their way into making tons of money out of it. I just think it's
Piers, how long then? Do you want
the grasping commercialization of sexuality
wait, so
that
you
I
disagree
find
with the current-
so
Is
objectionable.
your issue just how long? Is it you just want a week or a day? Like, what do you? Is that the
If
issue?
you want to have
the
a
length?
pride day, fine. But why a month? Goes on
What
and
does it
on
matter
and
if it's a
on.
month or a day?
Huh?
Wait, couldn't
What does it matter if it's a month
corporations?
or a day?
Well, you
Well,
get,
are we gonna have
if it's a day,
necrophilia
it's a
month?
day
Can
longer
we
than I
have
get as a
necrophilia
straight
month?
guy. I mean, what about me? Where am I?
Wait,
Where's my day?
Are you
Well, I
bullied
want
for being
necrophilia
straight?
We don't have the
month.
same
Where's that
issues.
at?
Wait,
I
hold
get
on, hold
bullied
on,
all the
Piers.
time. I've been bullied on social
Not for
media
being
all
straight.
day.
Not for being straight. No.
All right, let's move on. I want to play a clip from Joe Rogan. I'm going to start with you, Jay, on this. This is Joe Rogan talking about the R word.
It's one of these retarded shows where they're screaming. There's the word again. We brought it.
Yeah.
We were just talking about
You
that.
did it early.
The word retarded is back, and it's one of the great culture victories that I think
It
is
is.
spurred on probably by podcasts.
Now, Jay, is it a great moment, a great cultural victory that the R word is back, which obviously is short for, it's retarded, it's mentally retarded, it's for people who are mentally impaired. It was used in a derogatory way against people who are mentally impaired. Why would that be a cultural victory to bring that back?
Well, I'm a big fan of the R word because I myself act retarded all the time and I'm proud of it. In fact, I would actually probably get retarded tattooed across my back because I think it is a cultural victory. I'd love to be
That's
able to
very
say
fitting.
what's on
Right.
my mind. I think, yeah, I mean, well, these guys are retarded as an example. So we have panelists that are retarded. So yeah, I love the R word. I'm rated R totally. And I think that it's a freeing thing. It's a way to express the way we express things in the 80s and the 90s without problem. Like, you can go watch Bill Murray comedy movies and they're great because
Yeah, but people
have
used
the
to,
freedom
but
of
hang on,
speech.
people used to use the N word, 30, 40 years ago, right? But then
yeah, and
that
I
was,
champion all the comedians
but that
still use
became
the N.
something that was taboo in society because it was deemed to be very offensive to black people. The R
Yeah,
word,
but I don't think it
the
is.
use of the R
So,
word is deemed
not
to be
wrong.
very offensive to people who are genuinely mentally impaired, and they don't like
He's
it.
making a soy face, like he's like freaking out over there.
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry. You just said it's
but
justified
there's a
for
difference
white people
between
to say the N
taboo
word.
and what's wrong, morally wrong. I don't
Interesting.
equate the two.
All right,
Taboos are not
Parker,
equated
your
to
response.
morally wrong.
So here's my question: do you think that Jesus would say the N word, and do you think Jesus would say the R slur?
Jesus does say jokes and slurs in the Gospels. Yes, he talks
Does he-
about.
So Jesus
He
would say
talks
the R
about
slur
the
and the N.
equivalents in his day.
So
Yeah, he
Jesus
calls
would
people
say the
dogs.
N word and the R slur.
He
That's
calls
not the
people
same thing as
dogs,
the N word
which
and
is
the
a
R slur.
reference to you guys as vice.
Parker,
How does-
Parker, do people in your friendship group ever use the R word?
No, never.
It's just a taboo word.
Yes, I think it's incredibly wrong to use. You shouldn't use it.
People in
And
your
honestly,
friend group
fact
use
that-
the N word.
Can I
But,
please?
but
can I please
and out of
respond?
interest, Parker, what is your rationale personally for not using it?
I think it's incredibly harmful. In the same way that we don't use other sorts of slurs because they're harmful,
Hey,
I think that
if
we
your
shouldn't use this word
arguments
because it's harmful.
Hurt my feelings. Should you not argue?
So no, specifically, we're saying it meets a threshold of harm, right?
Whose
because the
threshold?
R slur and the
Whose threshold?
my
is arbitrary?
threshold, my
Your
threshold.
So
This
it's
is arbitrary.
subjective. That's a subjective
Yeah, we're ta-
argument.
we're-
Thank
we're
you. So it's
ta-
only
we're
your
ta- we're
personal
ta-
subjective
Wait,
taste.
we're obviously we're
If
talking
it's
about
your
under
personal
my.
subjective
Can I
taste, then
please
it can
finish? Can I
also be
please
mine.
finish?
Okay,
Can I
well
please
then,
finish?
Parker, it
Working an
doesn't
argument
reach our
against a bad
threshold,
argument.
Parker.
All right,
It
Andrew.
Andrew,
doesn't reach our
fine. That
threshold,
would be.
Parker.
I understand, Andrew. That would be your perspective on the matter. But given my perspective, I would say that meets my threshold. Are you saying it's okay to use the N word,
And
Andrew?
it's subjective, and it doesn't work as an argument.
Wait,
Andrew,
why
is it
do you
okay
think
to-
people that,
Andrew,
wait, I
Andrew,
have to ask
Andrew,
you,
hold
why
on,
do
hold
you think,
Yeah. Parker. Is it ever okay to use the word retard?
No. Is it okay for you to use the N-word?
Is it even okay to use the word retard to reference the word retard?
I think it's wrong to use it in general. Can you please use?
Can you answer my question, and then I'll answer yours? I promise.
I said it's
Is
wrong.
it okay
I said
to
it's wrong.
refer to the word
No.
retard if you're explaining the word retard?
Say arsler.
So
Well-
you can't. Okay, so you
well-
can't even use. So just the word itself. Okay, so here's the thing that's so funny about this, right? Is like
Superstition.
ultimately when we say
Am I able to ask a question yet?
retarded, yeah. So I wouldn't use
So
the
fucking
N-word. Here's
weird.
why. When I say that if somebody says the N-word, what ends up ultimately happening, there's not really too much in the way of equivocation there. Retard is not actually referring to retarded people, though. Basically, ever. Nobody ever says it, Parker, to refer to somebody who's actually retarded.
That doesn't change it.
99%
Wait,
of the case
hold up.
use
If
of
you're
a
using
word.
N-word to refer to a white person, it's still wrong. Would you use the N-word to refer to a white person?
I mean, in some circumstances, I think that you can use it in a comedic sense. That's hilarious. Sure.
You think white people using the N-word is okay in any circumstance?
Yeah, comedic senses especially. I think it's fine.
That's disgusting as fuck. You do it.
Oh
do you
my
think it's okay
God!
to do it right now?
Wait, is
It's
that an
your
argument?
subjective basis.
Is
There's no
that an
basis.
argument, Parker?
Wait, me calling something disgusting because I think it goes against my
Oh,
moral
you think it's
intuitions?
disgusting?
What's
okay,
the
right.
argument?
Homosexuality is
That's subjective.
disgusting because
Am I
it
able
goes
to
against my
finish?
moral
All right, let me bring in
Can I-
Danny.
can I respond?
Let me bring,
You-
hang
you
on,
seriously
hang
didn't
on,
let me
hang on,
speak.
hang on. Let me bring in Danny. This is what NBC said, NBC News, when they covered the return of the R word. They said, while its use has percolated in the comedy world for years, only recently has the word and discussion of its return become more normalized. That is fueled in no small part by a sense that the tide has turned both culturally and politically against those seeking to keep the word out of the popular lexicon. But the battle lines are not as clear as one might think. And there's no doubt that's true. I mean, what is your view about this?
I mean, we got to remind ourselves why people like us are against use of the R word, and especially in public places, right?
Yeah.
It's because it was a term, I believe, like technical term for mentally disabled people, and we don't want to demean those people or accidentally offend people that have children or relatives or friends that are mentally disabled, right? And so it has that connotation. Unlike the word dog, when Jesus used the term dog, right? There's no such connotation, right? You'll have to be reminded of why it's considered to be a
No, it's
slur,
false.
right? I mean, it's like you
It's
forgot.
false.
Yeah,
That's
but
just
so is
made
like
up.
the word.
This is
So
not
is the
true.
word
This is
moron.
made up.
So is the word moron. The word moron had a really negative societal connotation, and it still does. And people use it all the time, just in lieu of the word retard. They'll just say you're
Right,
a
but that's
moron
a-
instead of you're a retard. It's
the
like
R word is more
you're
recent.
hang
I
on,
think
hang
that
on.
matters.
You're begging. Hang on.
It's
You're picking and
arbitrary.
choosing. Yeah, you're picking and choosing which thing to be selectively offended by. You're not. I don't. So like, let me ask you guys this honestly.
It's the
I want you guys
distinction,
to
the harm.
answer me fucking honestly. Does the word retard actually offend you?
Yes. I think it's fucked
You,
up for you to
Danny?
use. I've been
Does it
very
actually
clear. It's
offend you,
fucked up.
Danny, when somebody says
Yes.
the
Wait a
word
minute.
retard?
Yeah, it does.
So
It
if
does,
Zach
especially in public
Galifianakis,
places and professional places.
so Zach
like this.
Galifianakis does some when he does comedy and he does a movie and he makes a joke and says retort, is that also bad?
I'm confused the context of what you're referencing. Is he specifically trying to
No, wait a
refer to
minute.
the
Now, so
arsler?
now
If he is,
context
then yes.
matters. So now the
Yeah, he's
context
trying to
matters.
allude to the word retard.
I don't. Okay, then yes, that's wrong.
Yes, that's
Okay.
wrong.
I thought
So
you were
it is
saying
like
like
any,
someone.
any
I thought you
word
were. I
that
thought
references
you-
another word now is wrong, like moron.
so specifically in terms of the one I thought you were referencing. I thought you were referencing like someone responding to an argument. I thought it's the particular term that
No,
you're using.
Zach Galifianakis in a comedy movie saying retort
I
as a
understand.
joke instead of retard.
So if your
Yeah, and
friend
I think
says
that's
to you,
incredibly
Parker,
fucked up to use.
Okay, so now
So-
also any word
yeah.
that refers to the word retard is now wrong, like moron.
I think if you're intentionally specifically trying to use a word right in place specifically of the arsler, specifically as to create the same type of outcome as the arsler,
So
and
any
I do
word
think
that could
in
refer to that word is
particular
now wrong.
intention, I think that particular intention would.
So you can't
definitely
say
be
the word
wrong.
moron. So now you
Right,
can't
you can't say the word moron.
You don't necessarily have that intention. It doesn't meet
so
the particular
this is
threshold
you,
of harm
you
as
just
well.
spiraling into insanity because
That's not. I gave two
subjective.
conditions to separate it. I gave two conditions.
Who's-
Wait, it being
Your
subjective is not a
conditions are
critique.
arbitrary.
Wait,
They're
wait,
made
wait.
up.
Wait, it being
They're
subjective is not a
subjective.
critique. That's not a critique against
Yes,
the
it
view.
is. Yes, it is.
No, it's not. How is that a critique?
Yes, it is. If something's purely subjective, then I can come with all the same claims with all the same force, and there's no way to resolve the two. That's why purely subjective arguments fail.
Wait, there not being a resolution, particularly between the moral disagreement of me and you, isn't a critique, particularly of my perspective.
Then you can't say anything is morally wrong. There's no ought from an is.
Wait, I can say something is morally wrong under my perspective. You're misunderstanding subjective morality.
You're not giving.
You, wait,
you
I have a
can't tell
question.
me why
I have
it's
a question.
wrong morally,
I have a question.
objectively,
Well,
if
then
I
I'll
can
ask you this
also
question.
counter it.
Can I ask you this question? Do you think that morality is true dependent upon God's stance or independent of God's stance?
Ultimately, it's grounded in God.
Okay, so
Right,
it's
and God is
subjective.
a subject. Yeah, God is a subject.
No, that's
so.
not a subjective argument. The argument.
Wait, God is a
The argument is
subject.
that it's objective.
God's
The
a
The fact that a
subjective.
God
person
is a
makes an
subject.
argument doesn't make the argument subjective. Your argument
God is
is
a
pure
subject.
subjectivism.
Is God a
Two
subject?
different things. It's a category error.
Is God a
How's that a
subject?
category error?
It's two different categories. A subjective argument for
We're
ethics
we're
is
two different people too, right?
different
How's
than
it
a
relevant,
person
right?
who's a subject making an argument. Those are two
The
different
point is that God is a
categories.
subject; He's not an object, right? We're subjects, right? We understand morality in terms of
That's
God. In fact, anybody should
that's you're
understand, right?
equivocating again.
Look, can we bring this
the
back
fact
to the
that
point
God's
here?
a
hold on,
subject
no,
doesn't
no.
mean
No,
that
no,
it's
you wanna
not
run away.
objective. That's
No, you
idiotic.
can't.
Wait, God having his particular view on morality is no different than me having my view because we're both subjects.
The
Can you tell me
argument
what a
is that
subject
it's an objective
What is it, Jay? What is a
morality.
subject? Jay, what is a subject?
You're equivocating on the fact
What
that
is
a
a subject?
subject is making an argument versus the
do you
argument
think
being
objective
subjective.
No, you said
That's
it.
a
Wait,
philosophical category error.
Jay, I
This
asked
is
you
like
if it's
talking
true.
to children.
I asked you.
It's a category error, you idiot.
I gave you the youth throw dilemma. I asked you if it's true dependent upon a stance or independent of a stance. You said it's dependent upon God's stance. That's subjective by
No,
definition.
I said that the argument for Christian ethics is not a subjectivist ethic, and because God is a subject, it doesn't make the system subjective. That's an equivocation
What do you think
error on
subjective
your
means,
part.
Jay? What does subjective mean? What does subjective
Purely
mean, man?
relative to the individual.
Okay, is God an individual?
True dependent upon a stance.
Is God an individual?
That doesn't mean that the ethic is subjective. It's
Just
an
answer the
objective
question.
ethic. You're
Is
just
God an
rephrasing.
individual?
You're substituting the word individual for subject.
I'm asking you if God is an individual.
you
Yes
did.
or no, coward?
That doesn't mean that the ethics is subjective.
Yes
that's
or
a
no?
system and
Who's running now?
It's an
Is God an
epistemological
individual?
argument that's
Just answer the
different.
question.
From
Let me bring
subject.
Andrew.
This is a
Andrew, you wanted
basic
to.
mistake.
Andrew, you wanted to get in here.
Jay's getting cooked, so he's
what
got
were
to
you
get
gonna
him out.
say?
Jay's getting cooked.
You're making a dumb
Dodge the
mistake of
question.
language.
Hang on. Let Andrew come in, please.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of obfuscating from the point. What does any of that have to do with the point of retard? So, and
He
you being
brought up
offended by
subjective
the
morality.
word.
Are you listening?
Yeah,
What?
Can you hang on? I'm talking to Parker, not you, Danny. Calm down.
I'm
Wait,
talking
you've
to
been
you
cutting
both,
people
right?
off this whole
I don't
time.
understand. I don't understand, Parker. When a friend of yours comes over and he says something to you, like you're in private, and he's like, "Hey, hand me that," and he tosses it and you miss it, and he goes, "You retard." You literally stop the kind. You go, "Don't say that. It's very offensive." Do you say that? It's very offensive. I really don't like it when you say. Do you dress him down, Parker? If you have someone who calls you a retard in a friendly way.
I'm
I would like to say
sorry.
something.
My
I
mic
want-
cut
I
out,
wanna-
so I
I
couldn't hear you.
I want to post something to Andrew.
If you have a
I wanna
friend,
post
if you have
Andrew.
a friend, shut up, Danny. If you have a friend, Parker, and your buddy comes over and he like tosses you something and you drop it and he's like, you retard. You dress him down? Do you go, "I can't believe
Yeah, I
it.
would
You,
say-
you called
yes,
me a
I would say that's
retard."
wrong.
Why?
Yes.
That's
I would like to
hurting
say
other
something now to
people's
read
feelings.
response. I would
But
like to
who's
say something.
around?
Yes, I would say
Parker,
that.
who's
Andrew,
who's around to be
it's
Parker?
not hard
Who's
to
around to
understand
be
Parker's
offended
position.
except
Just let me
you?
talk.
Who's
I'd like
around
to
to be
talk,
offended
right?
but you?
That
Parker?
I would like
doesn't
to ask
change whether or
Andrew a
not I think
question.
it's wrong.
Yeah, so
All
I
right,
don't
let
understand.
let Danny respond. Danny.
I want to give Andrew a hypothetical. Suppose there's this unknown society where if you show this signal, everyone's extremely offended. They'll get very angry, like people get angry at typical slurs like the N-word, right? Would you go
The
around
Vulcan
just
sign
doing
for
this?
logic? The Vulcan sign for
Hmm?
logic.
Do you understand the hypothetical?
What are you
Do
posing
you
a
understand the
hypothetical?
hypothetical? So imagine
No,
you go
I
to
don't.
a
Can you
make-believe
use
society
really
where
small?
this
Can you use really small words, bro?
Okay, imagine a hypothetical, right, where
Mhm.
you're going to a society you don't know about, but all you know is if you do this.
I'm
right,
imagining
it's
a
heavily frowned
hypothetical?
upon. Let me finish. You didn't understand
Oh,
the hypothetical, so I'm having to repeat it. So let me finish.
Yeah, repeat
If
it. Use small
Let's
words.
say this is extremely. Let's say this signal is extremely offensive in that society. Really offends people. Would you go around just doing this to troll people, or would you not do it?
I would definitely tell him to live long and prosper, bro.
Okay, you're just not engaging in the hypothetical. You're not a serious person.
What do you
I'm
mean?
trying to
That is
illustrate
serious.
Is that what I'm trying to illustrate is that if a
a
term
good point.
really offends a friend of someone, right, or if you're or a family member or something like that,
Yeah.
why would you use the term but to piss them
The
off?
trouble is that we've got to a place in our society where the language police are now so out of control that we can't even use the word in hospitals, mother, because somebody who is a trans person, trans man who's having a baby objects to the word mother. And that's the problem with language police, is that if there's no natural societal limitation to it, it's never ending. Somebody somewhere will always be offended by a word somewhere. And at the moment in society, it's like there are 1,000 words that upset people. That's my problem with it.
And Danny, what do you do in that same
wait, no, let me
hypothetical if half the
respond.
people mean it a different way?
Parker, you wanted to respond to that?
No, I want to respond to this particular point. Christians get oftentimes very angry about specific terms you use, whether it be in the context of their particular beliefs, whether it be transubstantiation, calling them a cannibal, specifically under their view, if it is the case that they think it's the actual like body and blood of Christ that they're eating specifically within and drinking within communion, right? That us calling them a cannibal, they get really, really angry with, or us blaspheming the Holy Spirit, they get really angry with.
And you don't seem to care about doing that, do you?
They're No, I don't. They're the tone police. When
Yeah,
it comes to
right.
that. You guys don't talk. You guys
You're
don't
totally
talk about
hypocrite.
that. No, it's not, because I'm not a Christian.
Yeah,
I don't
it is.
hold those perspectives.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's
hang on. That's
right.
okay.
So
Hang
why
on.
should we
Hang on.
care?
That is fascinating. So,
Yeah,
in other
exactly.
words, you don't mind doing the slur against Andrew over
It's
things he
Christians.
cares very
Because
passionately
they're-
about his religion because
because
you
it's
don't
purely
share
subjective.
his religion.
Wait, that's not what
Therefore,
he said.
therefore you
Wait,
can't
how is that a
offend him.
slur?
Therefore, you can't offend him.
How is that a slur?
He said, "Would you use the
No,
word
no.
cannibal?" You said,
The
"Yeah, you
point-
wouldn't care."
wait,
That's not a
here,
slur.
the
That's
point-
not a slur.
Hang on.
It
A
is to
slur-
him.
They just
hang on.
redefine
it. It is to him.
Anything.
Well, a slur was
Parker,
what offended
Parker.
people. What offended people. It was
See, so
supposed to be
hang
what
on. So
offended
Parker,
people.
you decide
whatever
what.
offends is the
Hang
slur.
on, just to be clear, Parker, you are the slur monitor, are you? You decide
Yeah.
what isn't a slur,
Ad hoc.
and therefore
I'm sorry.
you,
All ad hoc
Parker,
definitions.
can say what the fuck you like, long as you have
Dumbass
decided
Parker.
it's not a slur. You see the flaw in the argument.
It's all ad
Here's,
hoc.
obviously we have
told Parker-
obviously we have definitions on what slurs are. I don't know why that's a confusing thing to you. Do you have a definition?
it's
Obviously you have a
defined it.
definition.
I would say saying to a
Obviously.
Christian that he's a cannibal because of communion or whatever, I think is utterly offensive. Yeah, and a slur. But you don't, because you don't share the religion. Therefore, you, language monitor Parker, have decided it's not a slur. And so as long as you don't think it's a slur, and this is my problem with your generation,
thee, but not
is
for
that you're
me.
so easily offended, except when you're offending everybody else.
Wait, if it genuinely is the case that it leads to a particular level of harm that I would say meets my particular threshold of harm, I would say we shouldn't use that term. All I was doing is describing specifically there are terms and words Christians think are very harmful
Well,
to them. that
cannibalism
they
is a
think we
criminal
should-
offense.
Listen.
Hang
Well,
on.
they
Parker,
think we
there's a
should-
lot more Christians than know how to be
Cannibalism is a
nonsense.
crime.
You're
accusing
equivocating.
it of him of being
You're
a criminal.
equivocating. No, actually, you're equivocating because I'm using their own definition of the term cannibal specifically because it is the case that you're equivocating because that's not. I don't think it's actually like the body and blood of Christ. So they didn't actually, in a meaningful sense, violate any laws. Does that make sense?
And I don't think I'm actually calling somebody mentally, slow when I say retard either, Parker. So what?
It still
what-
meets a
what
particular
law is that
threshold of
breaking?
harm that I would
Oh,
consider.
okay. Well, it
so bad
meets
that
the
you-
threshold of harm to
personal
me when you
subjective
call them.
threshold.
Yeah.
All right, we've got to leave
Okay,
it
well then-
there.
well
It's
then-
been a fascinating
well,
clash of.
Andrew.
Hang on, no, we've got to leave it there. It's been a great clash of cultures. I think we should do this again. I think both
Yeah,
sides
happily.
are learning from each other and beginning to bond. Thank you all very much.
Come back without the mute button again, Parker.
Okay, you can keep interrupting, buddy. You're so scared.
Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate, and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.